So in this video, I'm going to be analysing the effectiveness of United's pressing system, whilst also explaining why I think Christian Eriksen is a liability in this sort of system, and at the end of the video I'll come on to what I think Ten Hag can do to fix it. But before I go any further, remember to subscribe to the channel and check out my Patreon podcast, which will be linked below. But also, if you want cheap, good quality football jerseys for the new season, or retro jerseys from the past 40 years, then check out jerseyfifa.com, a link will be in my Instagram bio, and if you use coupon code ATLANTIS, you should get a discount as well. I'll leave my Instagram at the top of the description and comment section, and a link will be in my Instagram bio. So just over 10 minutes into the game, we can see that Fulham are using a 3-3 build-up shape. And as they look to play out in their box, you can see United are pressing them pretty high in a 4-4-2 shape. Bruno Fernandes is a fantastic presser in the front line, you can see the energy he's putting into the press. And so now when Calvin Bassey receives the ball on a deep position on the right side, United squeeze across the pitch very effectively, with Bruno Fernandes applying the pressure on the ball, while simultaneously positioning himself so that Bassey can't go back to Leno and switch the ball to the other side of the pitch. And the positioning of the front two in this type of situation is absolutely crucial to the overall effectiveness of the press. As you can see, Højlund is coming back across, ready to apply pressure if the ball goes from Bassey into Paulinho. Garnacho has shifted across, so he's in a position to instantly press the right back if he receives the ball, but not too far wide as he still needs to cut that passing lane into Iwobi. And with Eriksen coming across, United do a fantastic job of reducing Calvin Bassey's options and forcing him long. And after some headers back and forth in the Fulham half, the ball comes to Maguire on the halfway line and he performs a fantastic first time volleyed pass directly out to the left side with Garnacho, and I thought Maguire's passing was excellent throughout the whole match, not just his long passing but also his incisive passing. But even though Garnacho isn't able to get the ball fully under control, as soon as Fulham regain possession in their defensive third, Bruno Fernandes is there to lead a counter press, stopping Fulham being able to circulate possession. And throughout the game I thought United looked pretty good when they were pressing high up the pitch in Fulham's defensive third, but the problem came when Fulham were able to move the ball into the middle third, and this was where Christian Eriksen was left rather isolated, and due to his lack of athleticism, Fulham were able to progress the ball past him very simply when they got into these positions. Here we see in the second half as Fulham are carrying the ball into the middle third that United are still in that 4-4-2 defensive shape, but the problem is the distances between the wide midfielders and the central midfielders is far too much. Maybe Garnacho can get away with this wide position in a flat midfield 5, but in a midfield 4, particularly with Eriksen playing in the left side of central midfield, Ten Hag has to be instructing both wide midfielders to shift in very narrow to congest the centre of the park. United don't do this, and Fulham are able to play an incisive pass into Willian, who bounces the ball back into Alex Iwobi, and now both McTominay and in particular Christian Eriksen are isolated in the centre of the park, with two Fulham players sitting either side of them in the space. Now the pass from Iwobi takes too long and is quite poor, and this allows Garnacho to get back and eventually give away the foul. But against better sides, they'd completely play through United if they leave this sort of space between the double pivot and the wide midfielders, particularly in a midfield 4. Eddie Howe's Newcastle defending a 4-5-1, and they're even narrower than United's midfield 4, essentially giving them 5 players congested in the centre of the park, making it incredibly hard for the opposition to work the ball between the lines into the half spaces, and usually forces the opposition out wide where it's a lot less dangerous, more predictable, and overall just easier for Newcastle to defend. Also, with that extra third player in central midfield, it just makes it easier for Newcastle to close off the passing lanes into the half spaces. But another rather overlooked reason why Newcastle's midfield is so much better defensively than Manchester United's, and it's not just the system, it's also the personnel as well. They just have so much more energy and legs in central midfield, and just like in prior games where we have seen the opposition able to take advantage of Christian Eriksen's lack of athleticism, Fulham were able to do this a few times in this game as well. Here we see around 25 minutes into the game that Fulham have the ball in the middle third and United are defending in that 4-4-2 shape. But as the ball gets worked out to Iwobi on this wide position, United actually do a good job of cutting off the passing lanes in field, with Bruno Fernandes close to Calvin Bassey, stopping that pass in field there, and Højlund also close to him, stopping Paulinho being able to open up a passing lane centrally as well. Eriksen and Garnacho's positioning is also fantastic. Garnacho's close enough to stop the pass down the line, high enough to actually apply pressure to Iwobi if he carries the ball forward, and also close enough to the flank to apply pressure to the right back if he receives the ball as well. But the issue here is going to stem from Harry Wilson's position in behind Christian Eriksen, but in front of Diogo Dalot. But at this phase of play, Eriksen's actually positioned very well in front of Wilson, stopping that pass opening up from Iwobi into Eriksen and forcing Iwobi out wide to the flank. But as Iwobi plays a pass out to Castagna on the right flank, we can see the problem developing here. Ideally, Dalot would do exactly what he does here, move out to apply the pressure to Castagna, and the central midfielder in front of Wilson has a few seconds to get back goal side and track his run into the space behind Dalot. However, the problem of playing Christian Eriksen in the midfield too now becomes evident, as he just doesn't have the legs to keep up with Wilson, and so when Castagna plays a ball down the line, initially Eriksen is behind him and Wilson could drive forward into that space. However, Wilson actually holds up the ball and you can see Christian Eriksen is now back goal side and it's essentially a 1v1. But again, Eriksen just doesn't have the legs to keep up with him and he just knocks a ball down the line and gets into a crossing position. Now if we actually play on this clip to the next phase of play, we can see initially Antony does actually provide a good flick for Wan-Bissaka, and now between them they need to work the ball forward, pushing the attack into the middle and then the final third so that United can counter quickly. And to be fair, Wan-Bissaka doesn't actually do anything wrong in this situation, as he retains possession well on that right flank, but now Antony has the opportunity to split the Fulham midfield line with one pass and get Bruno Fernandes into a position where he can now run into the Fulham half, and from here with Højlund and Garnacho ahead, United would be in an excellent attacking position. However, Antony as usual is far too slow to recognise his opportunity, holds onto the ball too long and in the end has to go backwards to Maguire, taking United from an opportunity to get the ball into Bruno Fernandes in behind the Fulham midfield line, to one where United now have the ball in their own defensive third, having to now work the ball through Fulham's midfield and their front line. And whilst Eriksen is a problem tactically, Antony is just a problem individually. I mean, he was so bad in this game. Not only can he not beat his man in a 1v1 situation, but he wasn't even able to link up with Wan-Bissaka down that right side. Even though Wan-Bissaka provided a number of good, I thought Harry Maguire was excellent, both in and out of possession. But going forward, Ten Hag needs to fix these tactical issues in central midfield, and I think this is how he does it. So first of all, if he does want to persist with this 4-4-2 shape pressing high up the pitch, he just can't use Eriksen in central midfield. He just doesn't have the legs under any situation to cover those sorts of spaces, which in pretty much every game he's going to be required to do. I think ideally Ten Hag needs two absolute monsters in central midfield. I mean, if you look at Newcastle's midfield line, all five of those midfielders are absolute workhorses. You've got Almiron and Gordon on the flanks, and in central midfield you've got Bruno Guimaraes, who on his own is a fantastic defensive player. He's got the energy to get around the pitch, whether it's pushing up high to apply pressure, or tracking runners in his own half. But either side of him in a midfield three, you've got Longstaff and Joe Linton, who from a sheer athletic and physical standpoint are two of the best central midfielders you could have in the Premier League. And when you compare that Newcastle midfield 5 to United's midfield 4, it becomes obvious why Newcastle are so much harder to break through the centre of the pitch than United are, as not only do they have an extra player with them using a midfield 5, but individually those Newcastle midfielders are just physically superior and are able to provide better defensive output than United's are. And as they say, football is a simple game, and sometimes it just comes down to having a certain number of players in a certain given space to congest the centre of the pitch, and having players who are just physically and mentally superior to the oppositions. If he wants to continue with this sort of defensive shape, I think Ten Hag has to put either Mason Mount or Amrabat into that central midfield. I think McTominay can definitely do a job in central midfield, and so I think certainly going forward, maybe bring in Mason Mount on the right side, play him in a much narrower position than either Rashford or Garnacho on the other side, and have McTominay in there alongside Sophie and Amrabat, and maybe 60 or 70 minutes into the game if United need a goal, if they're struggling to break down a deep compact defensive unit, then Christian Eriksen can come on into the midfield and play that creative deeper role.